Subscribe to our channel for more gripping tales of courage and mystery. I am Eldrick, a blacksmith in the village of Thornwick, where the clang of my hammer echoes through the misty valley. My forge sits at the edge of town, a solitary place where I shape iron into tools and horseshoes. The villagers respect my work but keep their distance, wary of my quiet nature. One foggy morning, as I stoked the fire, a commotion reached my ears. Shouts and cries drifted from the market square, unusual for such an early hour. Curious, I wiped soot from my hands and stepped outside. The air was damp, carrying the scent of rain and unrest. I saw a crowd gathered around the pillory, their faces twisted with judgment. At the center was a girl, no older than 16, her wrists bound in chains. She stood defiant, her eyes fierce despite her plight. The girl's crime, they said, was stealing a loaf of bread from the baker's stall. The baker, a sour man named Goran, ranted about thieves ruining his trade. The crowd nodded, their murmurs harsh and unforgiving. I watched her, this girl with tangled hair and dirt-streaked cheeks, and felt a pang in my chest. Hunger is a cruel master. I'd known it myself in leaner years. Her eyes met mine for a fleeting moment, sharp and unyielding, like a blade fresh from the forge. The magistrate declared her punishment: 3 days in the pillory, no food, no water. The crowd cheered, but I turned back to my forge. That night, under the cover of darkness, I crept to the square with a chisel. I couldn't let her suffer for a crust of bread. The chains were crude, rusted from years of neglect, and yielded to my tools with little fight. She didn't flinch as I worked, her gaze fixed on the stars above. When the last link broke, she whispered her name, Lyra. Her voice was soft but steady, like a river carving stone. I urged her to flee, but she hesitated, studying me as if I were a puzzle. "Why help me?" she asked, her tone wary. I shrugged, unsure myself, and told her to go before the guards returned. Instead, she followed me back to my forge, silent as a shadow. By dawn, she was still there, curled by the dying embers, her eyes watchful. I didn't know then that she carried a secret heavier than those chains. Lyra didn't speak much that first day, but her presence filled the forge with an unfamiliar energy. I offered her bread and water, which she accepted with a nod, never taking her eyes off me. Her hands, though calloused, moved with a strange precision, tracing patterns in the air. I caught her scratching symbols into the dirt floor, odd shapes, like letters twisted into knots. When I asked what they meant, she smiled, a flicker of mischief in her eyes. "It's a code," she said, her voice low. "Teach me to read it," I replied, half joking, but her gaze sharpened. She agreed, but only if I kept her hidden from the village. I nodded, sealing a pact I barely understood. Each night, after the village slept, Lyra taught me her code under the glow of the forge. The symbols were complex, a blend of lines and curves that seemed to dance on the page. She said they were born from a forgotten tongue, passed down by wanderers who hid their words from prying eyes. My hands, used to bending iron, struggled with the delicate strokes. Lyra was patient, guiding my clumsy fingers with a laugh that softened her sharp edges. I began to see her not as a thief, but as someone carrying a burden too big for her slight frame. The code, she hinted, held secrets about her past. I didn't press her, but curiosity burned hotter than my forge. Days turned to weeks, and Lyra became a fixture in my life, a spark in the monotony of hammer and anvil. The villagers noticed nothing, too busy with their own lives to suspect I harbored a fugitive. Lyra's lessons grew more intricate, the symbols forming words, then sentences. One night, she wrote a phrase and asked me to read it aloud. My voice stumbled over the strange syllables, but her face lit up, as if I'd unlocked something sacred. "You're learning," she said, her eyes bright with pride. I felt a warmth I hadn't known since childhood. But her smile faded when I asked who taught her the code. She turned away, silent, her secrets locked tight. The forge became our sanctuary, a place where the world's judgment couldn't reach us. Lyra began to share fragments of her story, not much, but enough to piece together a shadow of her truth. She spoke of a family lost to sickness, of wandering roads alone, of stealing to survive. The bread wasn't her first theft, but she swore it was her last. Her code, she said, was a gift from a mentor long gone, a way to hide messages from those who hunted her kind. My kind, I echoed, but she shook her head, unwilling to say more. I didn't push, though questions gnawed at me like rust on iron. One evening, as rain battered the forge's roof, Lyra showed me a tattered book hidden in her cloak. Its pages were filled with her code, dense and unreadable to untrained eyes. She translated a line, "The shadow moves before the light." It sounded like a warning, but she brushed it off as poetry. I wasn't convinced. Her eyes held too much fear for it to be mere words. That night, I caught her staring at the door, as if expecting someone to burst through. I began to wonder who, or what, she was running from. The code wasn't just a game. It was her shield, her weapon. And now, it was mine too. The village remained oblivious, but I grew restless, sensing danger creeping closer. Lyra's lessons became urgent, her voice tinged with desperation. She taught me to write messages that could be hidden in plain sight, etched into tools, woven into patterns. I practiced until my hands ached, driven by a need to protect her. One night, she slipped a note into my hand, written in her code. It read, "Trust no one but the flame." I asked what it meant, but she only pressed a finger to her lips. The weight of her trust settled on me, heavy as an anvil. I swore to keep her safe, no matter the cost. By the end of the first month, I could read her code as easily as my own name. Lyra's guarded nature softened, and she began to laugh more, her voice filling the forge with light. But shadows lingered in her eyes, a reminder of secrets untold. One night, she confessed she'd been hiding from a group called the Order of the Veil. They sought her code, she said, for reasons she wouldn't share. I felt a chill, knowing Thornwick wasn't as safe as I'd thought. As I hammered iron that day, I vowed to protect Lyra, even if it meant facing the Order myself. Her code was now my secret too, binding us in ways I couldn't yet fathom. The days grew colder, and so did the whispers in Thornwick. Strangers had been seen at the village's edge, cloaked figures asking questions about a runaway girl. I kept Lyra hidden, but fear tightened its grip on me. Her code became my obsession, a way to anchor myself amid growing unease. She taught me to encrypt longer messages, ones that could pass unnoticed under a merchant's gaze. I etched one into a horseshoe. "The flame guards the shadow." Lyra smiled when she saw it, but her eyes were distant. That night, she admitted the Order wasn't just after her. They wanted the book she carried. Its pages, she said, held knowledge that could unravel their power. I began to notice patterns in Lyra's behavior, small things that hadn't stood out before. She avoided windows, flinched at sudden noises, and never slept deeply. Her code, I realized, was more than a language. It was a map to something greater. One evening, she showed me a page from her book, its symbols arranged in a spiral. "It's a key," she whispered, her voice trembling. A key to what, she wouldn't say, but I saw fear and hope warring in her eyes. I wanted to demand answers, but her trust was fragile, like glass fresh from the furnace. Instead, I poured my energy into mastering her code, hoping it would reveal her truth. The forge felt smaller now, as if the walls were closing in with every passing day. Lyra's lessons grew cryptic, her words laced with riddles. "The code hides the path," she'd say, her fingers tracing invisible symbols. I began to see her code everywhere, in the grain of wood, the cracks in stone. One night, she handed me a scrap of parchment with a single line, "The anvil holds the truth." I puzzled over it for hours, my mind spinning. Was it a clue? A warning? Lyra watched me struggle, her expression unreadable. For the first time, I felt like a stranger in my own forge, caught in a game I didn't fully understand. The strangers in the village grew bolder, their questions sharper. Goran, the baker, mentioned a cloaked man offering coin for news of a girl with strange writings. My blood ran cold. I knew they meant Lyra. I warned her to stay hidden, but she seemed more resigned than afraid. "They'll find me eventually," she said, her voice flat. I refused to accept that, doubling my efforts to protect her. I began forging tools with her code hidden in their designs, a silent rebellion against the order. Lyra noticed and squeezed my hand, a rare gesture that warmed me despite the chill. We were allies now, bound by secrets and steel. One stormy night, Lyra revealed more about the Order of the Veil. They were no mere bandits, but a secretive group obsessed with controlling knowledge. Her book, she said, was one of many, each holding a piece of a larger truth. The code was their key, and she was one of the last who could read it. Her mentor had died protecting it, and now the burden was hers. I listened, my hammer still, as thunder roared outside. Her words painted a world far bigger than Thornwick, one where secrets could topple empires. I felt small, yet determined to stand by her. The forge, once my refuge, was now a battlefield. Lyra's lessons took on a new urgency, as if time were slipping through our fingers. She taught me to hide messages in plain sight, on blades, in jewelry, even in the soot patterns on the forge walls. I marveled at her ingenuity, but fear gnawed at me. The order was closing in, their presence a shadow over the village. One day, a cloaked figure lingered near my forge, watching from a distance. I pretended not to notice, but my heart pounded like a hammer on iron. Lyra saw him too and slipped into the shadows, her book clutched tight. That night, she wrote a coded message, "The light betrays the shadow." I didn't need to ask what it meant. The village festival approached, a time when Thornwick buzzed with life. It was the perfect cover for the order to strike, and Lyra knew it. She grew restless, pacing the forge like a caged animal. I tried to reassure her, but my words felt hollow. One evening, she showed me a new symbol, one she'd never taught before. It was a circle with a slash through it, like a broken sun. "It means sacrifice," she said, her voice barely audible. I asked whose sacrifice, but she turned away, her silence louder than any answer. I realized then that Lyra was preparing for something I wasn't ready to face. The code was no longer just a secret, it was a weapon. I began to forge in earnest, crafting weapons etched with Lyra's code. Each blade carried a message, a defiance against the order. Lyra watched, her eyes gleaming with something like pride. She taught me to write a code that could be read only under firelight, a trick she'd learned from her mentor. We worked late into the night, our hands stained with ink and soot. One night, she leaned close, her breath warm against my cheek, and whispered, "You're more than a blacksmith now." Her words stirred something in me, a fire hotter than the forge. But the weight of her secrets kept me grounded, wary of what lay ahead. The festival arrived, and with it, a sense of dread. The village was alive with music and laughter, but I saw cloaked figures weaving through the crowd. Lyra stayed hidden, but her fear was contagious. I kept my hammer close, its weight a comfort. That night, she showed me the final page of her book, a map drawn in code. It pointed to a place beyond Thornwick, a ruin hidden in the forest. "That's where it ends," she said, her voice heavy. I asked what it was, but she shook her head, tears in her eyes. For the first time, I saw her not as a teacher, but as someone afraid, someone I needed to protect. The order struck at midnight, their cloaks blending with the festival's shadows. I heard their footsteps before I saw them, heavy boots crunching on the gravel outside. Lyra grabbed her book, her hands trembling. I barred the forge door, my heart racing. "Stay behind me," I whispered, gripping my hammer. The door rattled, voices demanding entry. Lyra pressed a coded note into my hand, "The flame outlives the shadow." I didn't have time to read it fully before the door splintered. 3 figures stood there, their eyes cold as steel. I raised my hammer, ready to fight, but Lyra stepped forward, her voice steady. "I'll go with you," she said, and my world tilted. The Order's men were like wolves, their movements precise and predatory. Lyra's surrender stunned me, but her eyes told me to stay back. I gripped my hammer, torn between rage and fear. The leader, a tall man with a scar across his cheek, demanded her book. Lyra clutched it tighter, her knuckles white. "Not yet," she said, her voice calm but firm. I saw a flicker of respect in the leader's eyes, but it vanished quickly. They bound her wrists, and I lunged forward, only to feel a blade at my throat. Lyra shook her head, her coded message burning in my pocket. I stood frozen as they led her away, her figure swallowed by the night. The forge felt empty without her, the silence louder than any hammer strike. I unfolded her note, my hands shaking as I deciphered it under the firelight. "The flame outlives the shadow" was only part of it. Below, she'd written, "Find the ruin. Protect the key." I cursed myself for letting her go, for not fighting harder. The village slept, unaware of the drama that had unfolded. I gathered my tools, my mind racing. The map in her book was etched in my memory, its coded lines a guide to her salvation. I vowed to find her, to unravel the mystery of her code, no matter the cost. I left Thornwick at dawn, the village still cloaked in festival aftermath. The forest was dense, its paths tangled like Lyra's symbols. I carried a blade etched with her code, a reminder of our bond. The ruin was miles away, hidden deep in the woods, but I pressed on, driven by guilt and determination. The Order's men would be watching, I knew, but I had the advantage of Lyra's teachings. Her code was my map, my weapon, my hope. I whispered her words to myself. The anvil holds the truth. They gave me strength as I navigated the wilderness, a blacksmith turned warrior. The ruin was older than I'd imagined, its stones weathered by centuries of wind and rain. I found it at dusk, its arches looming like silent sentinels. The map led me to a hidden chamber, its entrance marked with Lyra's code. Inside, I found carvings on the walls, symbols matching her book. They told a story of a forgotten people, guardians of knowledge the Order sought to control. I realized Lyra wasn't just a thief, she was a keeper of their legacy. My fingers traced the carvings, my heart pounding. The key, I understood, was the code itself, a power the Order would kill to possess. I spent hours in the ruin, deciphering the carvings with the skills Lyra had taught me. Each symbol revealed more about her world, a world of secrets hidden in plain sight. The Order wanted the code to unlock ancient relics, artifacts said to hold unimaginable power. Lyra had been running to protect them, to keep the knowledge from falling into the wrong hands. I felt a surge of pride for her courage, mixed with fear for her fate. The note in my pocket was a lifeline, a reminder of my purpose. I etched a new message into the chamber's wall. The flame guards the key. It was my vow to her. The forest grew restless as I prepared to leave the ruin. I heard footsteps, soft but deliberate, circling the stones. The Order had found me, drawn by the same map I'd followed. I gripped my blade, its coded etchings glinting in the moonlight. 3 figures emerged, their cloaks marked with a symbol I now recognized, a broken sun, the sign of sacrifice. They demanded the key, but I stood my ground, Lyra's lessons burning in my mind. "You'll never read it," I said, my voice steady. They lunged, and the fight was brutal, steel clashing against steel. I fought for Lyra, for the code, for the truth. I don't know how I survived, but the forest was silent when it was over. 2 of the Order's men lay still, the third fleeing into the night. My hands trembled, blood mixing with soot on my skin. I returned to the chamber, my resolve unbroken. Lyra's book was still with her, but I had the ruins carvings, a map to find her. I etched one final message before leaving: the shadow cannot hide from the flame. It was a promise, a beacon for Lyra if she ever returned. I left the ruin, my heart heavy but determined. The code was my guide now, leading me to her. The journey back to Thornwick was a blur, my mind consumed with Lyra's fate. The village felt foreign now, its simplicity a stark contrast to the secrets I carried. I hid in the forge, decoding the carvings I'd memorized, searching for clues to the Order's stronghold. Lyra's note was my anchor, its words a reminder of her trust. I forged a new blade, its edge sharp and its surface etched with her code. The villagers noticed my absence but asked no questions, their eyes averted. I was no longer just a blacksmith, I was a keeper of Lyra's legacy, bound to her by ink and iron. Days later, a rumor reached Thornwick. A girl had escaped the Order, leaving a trail of coded messages in her wake. My heart leapt. Lyra was alive, fighting back with the only weapon she had. I followed the rumors, tracking her coded signs to a nearby town. Each symbol was a piece of her, a breadcrumb leading me closer. I found one etched into a tavern wall, "The flame burns eternal." Tears stung my eyes as I read it, knowing she'd left it for me. I was no scholar, no warrior, but I was hers, bound by the code we'd shared. I pressed on, my hammer and blade at my side. I stand now at the edge of that town, the weight of Lyra's code heavy in my hands. The Order is near, their shadows lengthening, but I'm no longer afraid. Lyra taught me to read her secret, to see the world through her eyes. Her code is my strength, her trust my shield. I'll find her, no matter how far I must go, no matter what I must face. The forge is behind me, but its fire burns within, a flame that outlives the shadow. Her final message, carved into my blade, guides me, the truth is the key. I am Eldrick, the lone blacksmith, and I will bring her home. Thank you for joining this journey. Subscribe to our channel to follow Eldrick and Lyra's story and uncover more tales of secrets and bravery.